Hi, and welcome to our Black History Month project. For those who may not know me, my name is David White. I'm really passionate and I really love talking about Black history. I love talking about it from a perspective where we look at the rich and diverse history of Black people right across the world, but also especially for Black Britons as well. It's important that we recognise and we're proud of the history and the heritage within Britain, not just of recent decades, but centuries and centuries ago. So I hope you're going to enjoy this particular video, this particular episode for Black History Month. And we're going to be looking at a few individuals and also people groups within Britain and in Europe as well. Before we start, just want to share a quote that I love by Marcus Garvey, who, for those who do not know, Marcus Garvey is a Jamaican national. He was a man of great conviction, a man of faith, but also a pioneer in many respects, an activist, a campaigner, kind of a champion of what it means for Black people outside of Africa, and the importance of identity and history. And this is what Marcus Garvey says. He says, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And of course, you know, a tree will not be able to grow and flourish if it doesn't have its roots. And likewise, Marcus Garvey is saying that we need to know our history, our origins, and our culture in order to grow, not just as a people, but also as a nation and a diverse group of people as well, who also celebrate Black history, regardless of what colour or race or creed you are. Quick question as we go into it. I'm going to look at Tudor England. How many, or do you think there were many Black people living in Britain during the Tudor period? So I'm talking around 14th, 15th century here. How many people do you think may be living? Black people, that is. And so approximately 200 people, Black people, were living in England. Now you might think that's not a lot, but when we look at the context in regards to population, of course today there's over 7 billion people, but back then population figures and numbers were much smaller. So within this respect, this is a significant number of people that were living in Britain. Global population has always roughly been around 1 billion, 2 billion for scores of centuries. It's only been the recent advancement of medicine and science why people are living longer, why population has grown as rapid as it has. But within England during the Tudor period, it is reported that there was roughly around 200 people living. Now, this is only based on registers and documents that have been recorded. Anytime you see this, you'd believe that it would be a lot more people living there based on the records that we have. And how do we know this? Because within these documents, Black people were referred to as blackamoors or Moors or swarthy. That was the description given to people of dark skin or black skin. As I said, the evidence is seen in parish registers, in church registers, in tax accounts, court records. There's a wealth of documentation we have that verify that Black people weren't just visiting, but were living, working, made their homes, made their livelihood in British society during the Tudor period. We also have records that it shows within churches. There were 66 baptisms recorded of those who were African. Fascinating. And we also know from these documentation that people weren't just living in one particular area in England. It's recorded that Black people were living all the way up from the north of England, Hull, all the way down to the south of England in places like Cornwall. So we can see that it was a vast space or vast different regions where Black people were residing within British society during the Tudor period. It's also known that there were many other Africans living and working in Britain, in Scotland in particular. We know there's record of the Black Stuarts, and one of the most famous Tudors, which I know I covered last year and we spoke about, was John Blank, who is recorded as playing in the Westminster role for King Henry VIII's Westminster tournament. Be interesting for you to consider what jobs did people do in Tudor England. So those who were living there, who were black, what might they have done? Can I introduce you to a diver and swimmer by the name of Jacques Francis? Now, Jacques Francis is quite a fascinating individual that we come to learn about. The work of Dr. Miranda Kaufman in her book Black Tudors documents Jacques Francis as perhaps one of the most interesting characters that we come to see. Now, Jacques Francis is from Mauritania on the west coast of Africa, and he is recruited as a skilled diver. And the reason why we know this is because he was recruited along with his boss to salvage the Mary Rose. This ship was commissioned by Henry VIII. It was kind of the jewel, if you want, in the crown of King Henry VIII's navy. And just as it was setting sail, a fire was believed to have caught on the ship, and the ship sunk. And precious cargo was on the ship, a wealth of cannons, a wealth of resources. And so King Henry VIII wanted to salvage what he could. It was a massive loss to the crown. And so what happened was a group of skilled expert divers were commissioned, and Jacques Francis, being one of the lead divers, was commissioned and paid, this is what he did for his livelihood, to go and salvage from the Mary Rose in 1546. What's fascinating is there's a kind of a common misconception of black people don't swim, but here we see that Jacques Francis was a skilled diver, and it's not like the divers we come to know today that have advanced technology to use. And so he would have been skilled, he would have been trained, he would have perhaps been swimming from a young age, knowing and understanding of the depths of the ocean and what it means to do that type of work. What's also interesting about Jacques Francis is that he is the first black person recorded to give evidence in court. His boss was accused of kind of siphoning, stealing money, and so Jacques Francis was called to testify on behalf of his boss. Jacques Francis didn't speak good English, so it's reported that he had an interpreter, but it's recorded he was the first black person to give evidence in an English court of law. I want to go on to looking at Africans in Europe, particularly in Spain. And so one of the European countries that was influenced by Africa is Spain. Black people, or the African Moors, ruled Spain for approximately 700 years, and they left their footprint even till this day on Spain. They were depicted as black or swarthy or tawny in skin color. They built, or they kind of further established particular cities such as Cordova, Sevilla, Granada. These cities were established, and the architecture, the culture, even down to food and cuisine has been marked and has been kind of left with an African print on it. There's a great mosque in Córdoba known as La Mezquita, and this is one of the most fascinating buildings and pieces of architecture which was built by the Moors in Spain. It's also known that they were prolific thinkers, philosophers, mathematicians, and it's known that Córdoba alone, 60,000 books were produced a year within that city alone. And when you compare that to other cities in Europe, they just boasted around 600 books or 600 libraries. Absolutely fascinating. Cordoba was also known to have over 900 public baths. Hygiene was very important. They introduced hygiene, and it was known that a Moor would rather go without bread than soap. But one of the things they also introduced to Spain was oranges and also dates. It's a fascinating piece of history when we look deep into the imprint that the Moors had on Spain. And I'm going to leave it there. There's more that could be said, but I just wanted to highlight to you the fascination and just the rich history, especially here in Britain. And it's important that we recognise what that means, proud to be part of this diverse history that we have here in Britain, but also further abroad as well. And in looking at countries like Spain, how black people from Africa had a real impact on these places. So I hope that's been helpful, hope that's been useful. Please go away and do your own research and celebrate Black History Month. But also beyond that, continue to talk about these things, continue to celebrate Black History Month and other diverse history as you go on. So take care, and I hope to see you soon in our next video.